Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Cabinet Police and Fire on Thursday, 9th of February. Going straight on to the agenda, can I report, are there any apologies for absence? Second, declarations of interest. So if we can go on to item number 3, which is Police Scotland's performance report for the third quarter of 2022-23. And I think Superintendent Patrick Murphy is going to take us through this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm Superintendent Patrick Murphy, the Operations Superintendent for Glasgow South in G Division, and effectively support Graham and his team in the Golf Charlie subdivision, who will present the report on behalf of the local policing commander. So firstly, thank you very much for the invite, and I'm pleased to provide this report in relation to our performance for quarter 3. It's been a particularly demanding quarter as we emerge out of COVID and we see a kind of re-emergence of more traditional crime types, which I'm sure Graham will go into in detail. However, my role is very much to support Graham and his team by way of whether that be finance, cars, vehicles, fleet, in support of any operations that he has in the south of Glasgow and in his subdivision, which I'm hoping you'll see some really positive results as a result of that. The report will focus on kind of acquisitive crime, which I'm sure you'll probably have some questions in relation to. So it's obviously been in the media a fair bit. Public protection, drug dealing and misuse, violent crime and antisocial behaviour and disorder, which is clearly very impactful in the subdivision and causes that kind of wider community impact, which I'm pleased to say I've worked with Graham recently on a number of different operations to combat that. In relation to the division as a whole, we focus on that public protection piece and that whole public health approach to policing within the division and the subdivision. And as I say, I support Graham as we deliver on that. We continue to detect, deter and disrupt those involved in activity across the subdivision. I see that will be reflected in the figures that Graham presents. It's been a really challenging quarter also, and actually year in relation to events, football policing, which again has an impact not necessarily on this subdivision but the wider policing footprint across the division, which we need to draw from the subdivision. So it's been a really challenging quarter for that perspective, and also going into the festive season where we saw that return to normality following COVID in relation to shopping and events and so on across the division and the subdivision. I'd just like to thank Graham and his team. They've done a fantastic job over the quarter. The performance, as far as I'm concerned, looks well. The team worked tirelessly within the subdivision to keep the people of East Renfrewshire safe, and they've got my full support and backing throughout the course of the year and the quarters as they deliver the reports. I'm not going to say too much more on that because Graham will get into kind of real detail in relation to that, and my apologies, I have to maybe kind of go a bit quicker because I've got a meeting in relation to the football at the weekend, which I'm match commander for. But before I finish, I'd just like to take this opportunity to pass my condolences on to Scottish Fire and Rescue colleagues for the loss of a colleague, firefighter Barry Martin, who died tragically in a fire in Edinburgh. So my condolences to my colleagues in the fire service, a tragic loss for them. So I'll just pass over to Graham unless you've got any questions for me before I move on. No, that's fine.
Thank you, Chair, for your introduction and for the opportunity to present this policing plan update for quarter 3, the third quarter of the financial year 22-23. Before I go any further, I'd also like to add my condolences and to pay tribute to the fallen firefighter Barry Martin. Emergency service workers leave their homes and families each day not knowing what they might face, and Barry has paid the ultimate sacrifice in the line of duty, and our thoughts are with his family, friends and his colleagues. Returning to the report, this is our opportunity to update you on our progress in delivering our East Renfrewshire policing plan for 2023. Most concerning our communities and to emphasise our ongoing commitment to address those concerns through our successful partnership approach within East Renfrewshire. Superintendent Murphy has already highlighted some of the issues and some of the successes, but this report gives an overview of the important work carried out by officers. It highlights the challenges they face and the positive outcomes they can achieve. I will turn firstly to acquisitive crime. Acquisitive crime, and in particular theft by housebreaking, has had a significant impact on our communities. In this reporting period, the number of premises recorded as broken into, including attempts, was 31. Our year-to-date total is 92. This is 26% lower than the 5-year average, but is up 21% on last year. This area has been a priority, with significant resources both locally and nationally dedicated to enhance prevention and bring offenders to justice. This approach has recently delivered significant success, which will be reflected in the final report for Q4. This is not just an East Renfrewshire issue, and we are working with partners across the UK to share information, intelligence and best practice. Whilst Q4 will contain the relevant detection data, I am happy to confirm that during January, 5 males were arrested and charged in relation to a number of housebreakings across Greater Glasgow and East Renfrewshire. This was followed shortly thereafter with the arrest of 2 other males for an additional number of housebreakings that took place in East Renfrewshire. Whilst this is good news, we must remain vigilant, and where possible we should all consider basic property and personal safety measures. Looking now at crime and crime dishonesty. Overall crimes of dishonesty have slowed in growth, down from a 30% increase last quarter to a 21% increase for the year, and remain in line with the 5-year average. Motor vehicle crime is down compared to last year and the 3- and 5-year averages. There have been 77 motor vehicle crimes recorded this year. 50% of them were in relation to thefts from motor vehicles, and roughly 50% were theft of motor vehicles. Theft by shoplifting continued to climb, with 26 more offences than last quarter. Our festive campaign contributed to slowing this increase over the Christmas period, and I'll talk later about some of the success we had in this area. Looking now at public protection. There have been 83 sexual crimes recorded for this reporting period. Whilst this is an increase of 18 offences compared to last year, it remains below the 3- and 5-year average. In this area, 33% of offences have been successfully detected. We continue to see a trend in offences relating to online sexual extortion taking place. These offences can be orchestrated from anywhere in the world and have a significant impact on the victims. We highlight prevention and safety messaging on our social media platforms and through community engagement in schools. I've brought with me today some of the examples of the literature we share with communities that help protect our online privacy and safety, and I'm happy to share them at the end of the meeting. We have seen 409 domestic incidents recorded this year. In 40% of these incidents, a crime has been established. Where a crime is established, we exhaust all opportunities to gather evidence, with a 50% detection rate of domestic abuse-related crime. Part of our robust aftercare involves the policing of domestic bails conditions. We achieved a 93% compliance rate in safe and well visits. That ensures victims are updated with the bail conditions within 24 hours of them being set by the court. This is one of the highest rates across Greater Glasgow Policing Division. Our community policing team will follow up these initial visits where appropriate with scheduled checks to ensure the victim is safe and supported by Police Scotland and other partners. Looking now at drug dealing and misuse. During this reporting period, we have recorded 103 drug crimes. Of these offences, 96 resulted in a crime detection. Since our last report, through working with our community and through effective intelligence gathering, we have also successfully increased our recording of offences in relation to the supply of drugs, including possession with intent to supply. These have increased from 4 to 10. This is a 150% increase and is important in tackling those intent and spreading misery in our communities. We also continue to support drug outreach programmes through the East Renfrewshire ADP. This allows targeted support to those most at risk through drug misuse. Now looking at violent crime. Serious assaults currently sit at 14 for this year, which is 30% lower than last year. There have been 55 non-sexual crimes of violence recorded this year. This is up from 46 for the same period last year. Although this is a small increase of 9, we remain focused on this area, and this focus has delivered a successful detection rate of 46%. Crimes of robbery or assault with intent to rob have stayed almost static since our last report, with an increase of 1. This has resulted in a total of 8 for the year to date, with 7 being successfully detected. Crimes relating to threats and extortion have climbed to 16. This is up 33% on last year. We know that online extortion is on the rise, and as discussed, we are already working hard to prevent this where we can. Antisocial behaviour and disorder. We continue to see downward trends in calls relating to antisocial behaviour, as well as seeing this trend across the 3 and 5 year average. We have also seen a decrease of 20% on this year compared to last year. We are still experiencing small pockets of focused disorder within the 13 to 14-year-old age group. COVID has certainly hampered the successful early intervention and outreach work normally carried out by youth services. These projects would have normally reached and influenced this cohort at an earlier age. We are working hard with our partners to help address this issue with targeted work. There have been 25 fire raisings this year, which is currently below the 5 and 3 year average. In protracted incidents such as these, the expertise of the fire service can be an invaluable asset. Antisocial behaviour can have a lasting impact on individuals, communities and businesses. We work hard with our partners to understand the causes and how a multi-agency holistic approach can influence behaviour. One of these strands is proactive policing. Our targeted stop searches have a 30% success rate. The total number of crimes involving an offensive bladed weapon are down by 20% on the 3 year average, and we have a successful detection rate of 50%. Policing alone will not deliver against antisocial behaviour. It is only through working with our partners we achieve this long-term success. Looking now at our areas of focus in relation to violent crime. In October 2022, officers attended a report of an ongoing housebreaking within the Newton Mearns area. On attendance, officers observed a male nearby who appeared to be acting suspiciously. On further investigation and using appropriate legislation, the male was searched and found to be in possession of a knife and a firearm. The firearm was later identified as imitation. However,
sufficiently qualified to make that distinction.
Councillor Wallace, would you go on mute, please? Shall we carry on?
Can we carry on? Yes, not a problem. The firearm was later identified as imitation. However, the recovery was significant and the male was arrested and charged to appear at Paisley Sheriff Court. Looking at drug supply and manufacture. During this quarter, we continue to target, detect and disrupt those individuals and groups who are involved in the supply of controlled drugs. In October 2022, our community policing officers acted on intelligence and executed a search warrant at a property within the Barrhead area. A significant quantity of controlled drugs were seized, as well as other items involved in the supply of drugs. A 35-year-old woman was arrested and charged with drug-related offences. In November 2022, uniformed officers stopped 2 males who were acting suspiciously near a parked car. The males were detained under the misuse of drugs legislation and were found to be in possession of over 16 kilograms of cannabis. The males were arrested and charged for numerous offences. Now, looking at crimes of dishonesty, we continue to detect, deter and disrupt those involved in fraudulent activity in order to protect victims and the most vulnerable within East Renfrewshire. In December 2022, officers from our Economic Crime and Financial Investigation Unit, local community policing team and our colleagues in Trading Standards held a joint information evening presenting to elected members at the Council briefing, which was well received. This provided insight into the remit and the work of this specialist local department. During this reporting period, our community policing team continued to work in partnership with external agencies such as Retailers Against Crime, business owners and shopping centre management in order to address the rise of shoplifting. This included high-value thefts, where an intelligence-led operation saw a number of individuals of an organised crime group being identified as the main ringleaders in this large-scale operation. Community officers executed a search warrants at properties across the west of Scotland, and a number of persons were arrested. This operation also led to the identification of a vulnerable 79-year-old woman being used by the group to commit thefts. We were able to work with partner agencies to provide additional support to her in order to prevent further offending and to mitigate the risk of harm. Looking at vulnerable road users. This quarter saw Police Scotland's national calendar of road safety activity focused on our national speeding campaign. Officers from East Renfrewshire actively took part in this campaign, which ran from the 10th to the 30th of October 2022. During this campaign, a 67-year-old male was charged with careless driving for speeding within the Eaglesham area. In Neilston, a 27-year-old male failed to stop following a road accident and reports of careless driving. He was identified and charged with various road traffic offences and reported to the Procurator Fiscal. Road safety remains a key priority amongst residents within East Renfrewshire, and our officers carried out high visibility speed checks at key locations. In Giffnock during November 22, a 48-year-old female was found to be driving whilst 4 times over the legal limit of alcohol. And separately, a 58-year-old woman was found to be 6 times the legal limit of alcohol. Both were arrested and have been reported to the Procurator Fiscal. Looking now at domestic abuse, adult protection and child protection. 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. The annual campaign commenced during this reporting quarter. Officers in East Renfrewshire worked together with our specialist departments such as Domestic Abuse Investigation Unit and Domestic Abuse Safeguarding Unit in supporting of this campaign. We remain committed to tackling this crime, irrespective of the passage of time, and identifying those offenders who cause harm in our society. In October, officers received a report of a 70-year-old female who had endured years of significant abuse and coercive control, which had went unreported. Through extensive support and investigation, officers arrested the perpetrator and secured additional bail conditions to mitigate further risk to the domestic abuse survivor. Now looking at young people. In this quarter, we had several events with East Renfrewshire which attracted large crowds, such as the GHA fireworks event on the 5th of November. On the lead up to Guy Fawkes Night, our campus officers worked with our colleagues in Scottish Fire and Rescue Services and delivered inputs to children in both primary and secondary schools across East Renfrewshire. This included safety inputs on the dangers of fireworks, as well as discussing the legislation regarding possession and other associated offences. This quarter saw 28 calls to police in relation to youth in possession of fireworks and associated antisocial behaviour. Work has been undertaken well in advance of this year's events to tackle these issues and work with partners to address community concerns. Finally, Chair, I would like to highlight some of the successful engagement that has taken place over the last quarter, which will hopefully bring positive results as we move forward. During this period, Inspector Michelle Grant of our community policing team organised and held the first East Renfrewshire Action on Alcohol Conference. This was a great event which brought together elected members, partners, retailers, schools and the young people of East Renfrewshire to examine and discuss the impacts of alcohol on the people of East Renfrewshire. Since this conference, further constructive dialogue has taken place between partners, which now means we will also bring a community alcohol partnership to East Renfrewshire. It is hoped that this partnership will complement current projects that aim to understand and limit the negative impacts of alcohol in society. We continue to build on our success and look for inventive ways to work in partnership across East Renfrewshire. Chair, thank you again for the opportunity to present this report today. This concludes my review, and I'm happy to take any questions you or other members may have. Thank you.
Graham, thanks very much for a very comprehensive report. I'm sure there'll be a number of questions arising from members. Councillor Bamforth.
Sorry, I'm not sure how. Have I done that correctly? It's a bit too technical. It's quite loud, isn't it? Thank you very much, Graham. It's a really welcome report. And I think we have to remember that we still have the lowest crime rate in mainland Scotland. Sometimes when you look at percentages, the 30%, a bit like the Fire and Rescue Service, when you talk about these percentages, the actual hard numbers are actually quite low, so it's good that you've provided both of those. And I'm glad, I wouldn't normally be glad that any numbers went up, but I'm glad the domestic violence ones, because I know it's one of the things I always bump my gums about, because I think it's so important that people are confident to report it. And whilst I'm not glad that this lady that's been mentioned, I presume it's a lady, the 70-year-old, I'm glad that there was the confidence to come forward and report that, because I think that's really important. I also welcome the return of officers to community council meetings. I'm sure, now, pardon if I forget his surname, his name was Stephen, who came to the Broomkirk Hill the other night. It was a bit of a baptism of fire for him, I think. I think after about probably almost an hour, he got away, because there was a lot of questions. But I think part of that is because, you know, they hadn't been attending, understandably, for so long. So I'm glad that operationally you're able to spare that time, because, like you mentioned, a lot of your role is around reassuring the public. So my questions are around, one, I have a question about the cycle lane enforcement in Ayr Road, because I'm getting a lot of people complaining about that, because as you know, when the ones were taken away, the issue reoccurred of people parking in it, and it's not just a danger to cyclists. When you come out of like Broomvale, I did the other day, or do frequently, you have to actually drive right onto Ayr Road now in the flow of traffic to see, because there are cars parked along the cycle lane. So I'm just wondering about enforcement of that. I understand that once permanent segregation is installed there, that might resolve that, but it is actually quite a danger to everyone, the people parking in the cycle lanes. But I would like, and I understand you can only tell us for sub judice reasons a limited amount, some reassurance, and you did touch on it, the break-ins, also the incident at Pilmuir, because we have got people conflating that with some other things. So if you could reassure the public that you are actively, there is no ongoing danger to the public. And the other thing that people are looking for some information and reassurance about is the allegation of vaping sales in the area. Now, I don't know the detail of that, and perhaps some of it is, if you could give some reassurance of the facts around it, and whether it is being, the police are actively involved in it. Thank you.
There's a number of points there. Are you happy to respond?
Hopefully I've noted them all down correctly, Councillor, and I'll be able to give you a response to each, but if I miss any out, please do pick me up on it. So the first point you were talking about, domestic abuse, completely agree. Although the numbers are up in certain areas, that's probably a good sign. It's a good sign that people are willing to come forward, and we support them in doing that. Third-party reporting is a really important bit around that, the ability for them to go somewhere that's not a police office to do that, and we've established many of these across the East Renfrewshire area to allow that easier access and to provide that support in order to come forward. So I'm glad you've recognised that. The community council meetings, yes, Stevie, one of our community constables, was at that the other night. He did enjoy it, he told me. So, and I believe it went well. And the next one scheduled for February for the other community council area that we previously discussed. I've also spoken with Michelle, our community inspector, to look at reinstigating ward meetings again. Obviously they had fallen off due to COVID, so action is underway in that already, and we'll hopefully be able to update you on when we'll be able to start the first one of them. Looking also at the cycle lane, There's been ongoing dialogue between ourselves and the Roads Department, East Renfrewshire Council, in relation to the cycle lane. It was instigated with a solid white line during COVID periods, and there were temporary separation barriers put up at that point. They were removed, and we've been left with the solid white line. There is no traffic management order in relation to those, which makes enforcement of it more difficult. But where we can, we use other legislation such as obstruction. So our community policing team, Sergeant Gordon Sweeney, has been leading on that aspect of it. We know particular pinch points where it's worse. Some of that is down to breaks in the line or double yellow lines that are no longer enforceable and are waiting to be removed by the council. So there's a mixed, or I should say, it's not as straightforward as it first looks, but we're doing our best to work with the council to educate first, to influence behaviour, and where we can, and where we have the opportunity to apply enforcement and that. So hopefully you will see some change in that over the coming period. I should note though that when this first came to my attention just before Christmas, we had actually only had one complaint in 12-month period in relation to the cycle lane. So these complaints have come since that, and it's maybe because we've been highlighting the issue and engaging with the public around it. People are hopefully now more comfortable coming forward. In relation to the housebreakings we discussed earlier on, thank you again for appreciating that because it's sub judice, there's certain aspects that I can't discuss. What I can discuss is that we have a goal command structure in relation to this, where a superintendent leads it for G Division. These offences have taken place across the whole of the UK. We're working with 12 other police forces in relation to it. We have a dedicated intelligence cell and development unit in relation to it. We have a dedicated investigations team which has a detective inspector, 2 detective sergeants and 14 detective constables and police officers that are purely focused on that investigation side of it. That is then backed up by the work that I carry out locally, supported by the superintendent. So we have a patrol matrix where the officers default to in order to provide high visibility reassurance in these areas. We also have covert methods that I obviously can't go into too much, but we, on a daily basis, are deploying those covert measures, which has brought us some success as well. So there's a lot ongoing there. We should never sit back. The significant arrests we have had are good, but we also know that this crime and the method that the criminals use is not solely related to one group, one organised crime group. So we remain vigilant in relation to that and continue to police it the best we can. In relation to Pilmuir, there's not much more I can add than what's in the media put out by the press. So an individual was arrested there. That has led to further investigations, which has meant a search of the area. Unfortunately, due to the remote location of it, that will take a bit of time. So there is no wider threat to the local community whatsoever. So just to reassure you in relation to that. Vaping sales. So in some areas there's a belief that vaping is a gateway into smoking or drug taking. We are very alive to that. Our campus officers are involved in looking at the vaping aspect along with our community policing team, and it's how we work with the education department and how we work with the health department to have a coherent view and how to tackle that. And part of that is also done through the ADP, the Alcohol and Drugs Partnership. We rely on intelligence, and part of that is gathered through our campus officers in relation to understand if there are premises that are selling them to underage children. And where we can establish that, we work closely with Trade and Standards in the licensing department in order to tackle that. So it's definitely on our radar. It's going to be a joint approach to tackle it, but I just want to reassure you that we are dealing with it. And I believe that was all the questions that you asked. Hopefully I've answered them significantly, but if there's anything I can follow up on, please let me know. Thank you.
Thanks, Graham, for such a comprehensive response to those answers, and for reassuring the public on the steps that you have taken already on some of the crimes that have been happening in East Renfrewshire. So thank you very much for that. Councillor Pragnell.
Thank you, Chair. You touched upon the Action on Alcohol conference. Thank you to Michelle for, I know she was the main organiser for that. Local businesses and community councils wanted me to pass on their thanks because they really enjoyed it. And some said that it opened their eyes up to the issues in East Renfrewshire, particularly the videos that were shown at the conference. So people are more aware, and if that could become an annual event, that would be excellent. I noticed that there has been an increase in shoplifting, and I wanted to know, do you think this is due to the cost of living crisis? And if so, how are Police Scotland approaching it? Is it taking a public health approach? Because obviously it's not very good that people are shoplifting, but if it's due to the cost of living, are you pointing them in the right direction to where they can seek help? So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm glad you enjoyed the event. I think it was a success on many levels. For myself, one of the great parts of the day was actually listening to the children, the young people who were there from the schools, and their engagement in it, and they brought a different understanding and aspect to it, which is great. I definitely would like to see it be an annual event. This year it was funded by one of our ACCs through funding that he made available, and we'll look at how we can fund it as we go forward over the following years. And would welcome any suggestions in relation to how we can change that day, because although it was a great success, we know things move on, and we want to move on with the times as well. So in relation to the approach to, sorry, apologies, I'm trying to remember. Shoplifting, that's it. So, yeah, nationally, we've seen a significant increase in shoplifting. We can't say for sure that it is down to the cost of living crisis, but what I will say, what we have seen through our analysis most recently, is that the products that have been stolen are food products. Prior to Christmas, it was a mix of products, but that's been the trend. In relation to our area, there was a concerted effort working with all different partners, from the Retailers Against Crime, the Avenue, retailers around the rest of the areas, in order to tackle this, and that's why we managed to take make a significant impact on it in December. It was climbing through November, and we got to the first week of December, and it took a nosedive due to those actions, which I'm glad about. But we can't sit on our laurels around that, and it has to be part of that public health approach to policing. So we've added poverty as a strand of the public health approach to policing, and we've got a detective chief inspector who has the lead in that aspect of it, and he's working across all the authorities just now to establish how we best approach that and understand it. So I'd just like to reassure you it is part of our public health approach to policing. Hopefully that answered both your questions. Thank you.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks very much for that excellent report. I have some observations and questions slightly different from my colleagues. The first one really about the acquisitive crime, about it's incredibly encouraging going to the community council meetings, when people hear about the arrests and about these perpetrators being actually caught. What I think significant though is the fact that, and it has to be acknowledged, that the police have worked, like these perpetrators were coming from quite far afield, even as far south as England, and it's really encouraging that the intelligence being shared amongst the police is actually be able to, wherever these people are and where they come from, they get caught, and that's be incredibly reassuring for the communities. With regards to obviously your officers coming to the community council meetings, particularly Broome and Kirkhill, they really they were actually. They've now changed their date to actually suit better the community officers, so they can. But there was actually before Christmas, one of the officers came out on a Monday night when he wasn't working, from Ayrshire, and then the local people really appreciated that. So just want to acknowledge that. And so, moving on, a bit concerned about a crime that's quite difficult because, as you mentioned in the report, it's difficult. The perpetrator can be anywhere in the world, and it's on online sexual extortion. And I think you touched on it elsewhere as well, further on in the report. And obviously, I think the key thing there, particularly with schools, obviously been an area of major concern for me, educating the children on how to avoid, actually these happening, because for you to catch the person is incredibly difficult because of it's all, it's social media, etc. Just wanting to hear more about how we are, or how the police, the campus officers, etc. Is there some more work that we can do to help the people, the victims in particular? So I'll try not to. I think it's excellent. So moving on to another topic, the 93% compliance in the safe and well visits. I think it's excellent to hear. That is incredibly important that for people who are domestic abuse, etc., to know in advance of, like, as they're the victim, they need reassured about the perpetrator and when that person's or how it's been dealt with in regards with bail. That's really good to hear. So just an observation there. Moving on, now to drug dealing and use, and I'm a bit concerned to hear that the increase with the intent to supply, and obviously, if the dealers aren't able to, I think it's good that you're, catching the people, but is indicative of more of them coming into the area. Be interested to hear your comments on that. One other thing that, because as well, I think you used the word significant. And again, this is actually really encouraging for the communities to hear about, where in our community council meeting they talked about the neighbourhood watch, and it was actually someone who observed somebody in the area who reported the person who was then arrested with the firearm. Is that significant because it's so rare? Hopefully, I just would like to hear your opinion on that. And well, finally, sorry. It's good to hear that you detected and detained the males who had quite 16 kilograms of cannabis. Sounds like a lot. These guys were obviously main suppliers potentially of it, or is actually that not a lot? I'd be interested your experience will tell. I think that's enough, really. If you could give me some feedback on that, please.
So thanks, Councillor Anderson. Obviously competing with Councillor Bamford for volume of questions. So it's not a competition in here, by the way. So Graham, if you can answer that as best you can. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for your questions. And thank you for the support around the attendance of the Community Council. Our shift pattern for our community officers mean that they're not available on a Monday night normally, but some of them will come in and change their shifts and volunteer to do that, and I'm glad someone did on that occasion. If they don't, we try and find somebody else to attend. The extortion, or sextortion as it's sometimes called, we do a lot of work around that. I brought with me today one of the recent posts that we have done, and I can share that with you later on. We do a lot through social media because we're trying to reach the individuals that are using online facilities, and they're the ones who are affected the most. I've also brought with me today leaflets we have on Twitter, Netflix, TikTok, and other social media platforms that teach people how to stay safe and well, and I've got some to hand out at the end of today's meeting as well. But you have to catch them at source as well, the victims. My 10-year-old is better on the computer than I am, and shows me how to do things most days, so engagement at that school level is really, really important, and that's what we do, and that's why it's really important we've got that cohort of campus officers in East Renfrewshire. So just to try and reassure you around that. The 93% safe and well visits that we do is part of a regime to ensure that the victim is protected, and although it's 93%, it's probably higher than that. That's a technical pass at 93%, and there's rules around these things, but sometimes we'll have a victim who doesn't want to engage, and it does happen. So we might not get them within 24 hours, but we do persist in that in order to ensure they're supported. Looking next at the drugs activity and your concern around that, believe it or not, an increase in detecting folk in relation to supply is a good statistic to have. It's only happened through good groundwork, intelligence gathering, building that picture and able to target the individuals. I don't have any evidence to say that the amount of drugs available within East Trounshire has increased or that the amount of supply has increased. It's just that we've managed to be better at gathering that intelligence in order to tackle them. The firearms incident, yeah, significant because it was a firearm and because that is very, very, very rare, you'll be glad to hear. And going back to Councillor Bamford's message earlier on, we do have the lowest crime rate in mainland Scotland, and it's really important to remember that and to reassure the public in relation to that. And finally, your question in relation to cannabis and whether that's a significant amount, and I don't know if your words were, from a personal perspective, I couldn't tell you from a personal perspective whether it's a large amount. I would say it's a significant fine though. Most people we stop, search and engage with have small amount of personal use. That wouldn't be considered personal use, that would be considered a supply amount.
So can I just mention then, do you think that's like a main dealer, which is a key person possibly?
That individual, I'll need to check back, would probably have been charged in relation to the supply, so that would represent somebody who's dealing within the community. And I think that was all the questions from you.
Thanks very much, Graham. There are no other questions. I'd just like to note a couple of comments on your report, which again was very comprehensive. The social media campaigns on sexual extortion and relay theft, I'm seeing a lot more of that going on. Really welcome that. It's good to see that. And I'll just really encourage council members to share and amplify that message to our residents so as many people can get access to that information as possible. I note that you mentioned the briefing you gave, the information session you gave to council members along with trading standards. That was very appreciated and informative and illuminating. So I'd like to give our thanks for the colleagues who participated in that. And also note the comments you made on the Action on Alcohol conference. I think that was very welcome and I think very informative for people who attended that. And good to see that there's ongoing actions coming out of that. So really encouraging to hear. So thank you very much, Graham. So if I can move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item number 4, East Renfrewshire Local Policing Plan. And is it Graham or is it you, Patrick, that's taking this one?
Oh, apologies. Sorry, the plan was circulated just for the councillors to review and pass comment in relation to it.
So you weren't going to discuss it at this
I won't
meeting?
be presenting it, but it's there for review. It will be published in March.
Okay, okay. Should it have been on the agenda then?
I'll come back to the council for sign-off.
Just to be clear in relation to the process, the council actually has to approve the local policing plan, so that it will come to the council meeting on the 1st of March for approval, and I'll be in touch with the police regarding attendance at that meeting in case the wider audience of elected members would have any questions on the day.
So to be clear, do we want to raise questions now on this point or leave it for council?
I think it's entirely up to yourselves. I mean, there will be a further opportunity when it comes to full council. I think when we've discussed the local plan at this meeting previously, some members may have some comments which may or may not have resulted in further changes to the final version of the plan which comes to council. But you know, if the members are satisfied with the content of the plan that's been presented today, that's the plan that would then go forward to the full council for consideration.
Thanks, Eamon, for that clarification. Given that we do have the paper here, I accept that you don't need to speak to it, but are there any sort of questions from members here If you can keep them brief, that would be great, helpful.
It's just, yeah, it's excellent to have it and to see the interdepartmental, the working, the collaboration that's going on, and it's very comprehensive and covers and all the objectives and activities that are going on. There's just terminology really about like keep safe premises and others like within it that we might not know with regards like what these actually. A lot of what we do know about, but there's terminology that you may use that's possibly within the police force, and it just, I can actually have a separate discussion maybe afterwards if that helps.
I think that might be, if it's very specific on definitions, I think it's probably best for that to be handled separately. But thanks for that comment. My closing comment on this, I really welcome the report. It's very joined up and comprehensive, and it really, in terms of its objectives, very much aligned with what the Council is thinking, and obviously a lot of work has been done on that to make sure it links in with what we're doing. I am concerned, and I've sort of flagged this before, with the impact of budget cuts coming and how that enables us to do all the good stuff that we want to do, or does not enable us to do it. So I think we need to keep a watching brief on that. And it's not just for the police, it's for us as well within the Council, because it's issues as much for us as it is for you. But I think that's something we perhaps can pick up at the Council meeting. But it was a very welcome and comprehensive report, so thank you. Any other comments on this? No. So thank you very much for that, and I think we can let Superintendent Patrick Murphy go. Thank you for your presence. Graham, I don't know if you're staying or if you're going as well. Okay, thank you very much. So before I move on to the next item, I think it's important, it's already been raised earlier, but that the Council and Police and Fire Cabinet members would like to pay their deepest condolences to fire colleagues on the sad loss of firefighter Barry Martin and the line of his duties in Edinburgh recently. It was a shock to us all. The Provost has written to the Interim Chief Fire Officer to convey our thoughts and best wishes to his friends, family and colleagues, and we would like to thank all our colleagues in the emergency services for their selfless dedication and commitments to protecting others. This tragic death reminds us all of the risks that our colleagues in fire and police take to protect us every day. So we do really appreciate that, and our condolences go out. So thank you for that. If I can move on to item number 5, which is Scottish Fire and Rescue Service performance report for the third quarter. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and Cabinet members. Alan will shortly take you through the report, but it's good to see you all in person. A tough couple of weeks for the fire service family, not just in Scotland but actually across the UK and beyond. So I welcome the comments from the committee, from the Cabinet members and the Chair and colleagues in Police Scotland. It's very welcome. This report also covers the bonfire period, and I want to thank all local authority partners, Police Scotland, not least, for all their help, not just in the preventative work in Operation Moonbeam, but the delivery of it on the night. Activity was low and remained low across all 3 local authority areas that we cover, and that's done in partnership. It's a really good example of a year-on-year plan that gets put in place, and thankfully for us, it results in that reduction in operational demand. Just for, before I bring Alan in to do the report, we had news this morning around industrial action, which was positive. I'm hoping that it's positive. There's been an enormous amount of work around resilience arrangements, and I'm hopeful that they will not be required. But we will obviously update Cabinet members as we see what progresses from that. But this morning's development hopefully means that we can get back to normal business of being out engaging. We had a meeting yesterday with East Renfrewshire partners at Clarkson Fire Station around a fire skills course, and I'm hopeful now that we can put the industrial action to one side, that's the type of thing that we can get on and commit to, and make sure that we can commit to dates and engaging with the young people. So I'll just bring it on in. Thanks, Chair.
Good morning, everybody. So once again, thanks for the opportunity to present our performance report for Q3 covering the period from the 1st October to 31st of December. The report measures our performance against the key priorities within our local plan for East Renfrewshire and the challenges that we encounter in achieving these priorities within our communities. Also highlights our continued commitment to address these challenges and the positive work carried out by Scottish Fire and Rescue Service in conjunction with our partners to resolve them. Chair, if I could take a moment just prior to getting into the full report, just to give an update on our current UFAS situation. We had the consultation process, and just to give everybody a brief update, because it's something that affects us. So, as we continue on our journey to reduce UFAS incidents within our communities, we've appointed a UFAS reduction officer within East Renfrewshire, so solely responsible for East Renfrewshire. We have champions within our stations, and the champions within our stations will collate every UFAS incident, identify it, and they'll go through the staged process for identifying where we need to carry out additional action. So having a direct officer who works within the community, who will go out then within premises of high activity, and they will then look at carrying out audits and further engagement with individuals, with the hope that, and as it shows in this report, that it will start to bring it down for us. Moving on now, from the 1st of July, we'll stop attending automatic fire alarm signals to commercial premises, or automatic fire alarm calls to commercial businesses and workplace properties such as factories, offices, shops and leisure centres. So unless we receive confirmation that there's a fire or there's a sign of a fire, our control room operators will now be asking anyone who reports a fire alarm to check whether there is an actual fire before we turn out it, or even any signs of a fire. At which case, if there is, we'll obviously send the nearest fire appliance under the normal system that we've used before. And it's estimated that this change will greatly reduce the unnecessary call-outs which we go to just now, and it will free up capacity to increase our operational availability for other incidents. We'll be able to undertake more community safety, prevention work, and obviously it gives us ability to upskill our staffs by carrying out further meaningful training, which we currently get drawn away if we go into this type of incident. Some of the additional benefits that I'll run through with this is that each false alarm call can lead people to become complacent, so when you're continually hearing that, it dilutes the process, and in some cases people think it's false automatically and they'll ignore it. There's also a direct cost to businesses from productive time lost, and that we arrive there, the premises get evacuated and people come outside, and there's time lost there in terms of business while we carry out the relevant checks. It can also remove the potential from stopping SFRS being diverted to other incidents. Now, this not may happen all the time, but the potential is always there. And also carrying out, as I've mentioned, essential training and prevention and protective work. And we also know that blue light journey, the response to an incident under blue lights has got the potential for a road traffic accident at all times. So any reduction means less risk on the roads, and I think that's really important. And also there's economic costs, so approximately £1,900 per incident. It's a massive reduction in the amount of money that's going out via the taxpayer. So all these points make it really important. So our change in policy won't apply to sleeping premises such as hospitals, care homes, hotels or domestic dwellings, and we want to ensure businesses that they have the appropriate guidance and advice to help reduce UFAS ahead of our change in the response model. So duty holders should ensure that their staff are provided with appropriate training to ensure their safety when investigating fire alarm actuations. So when they get that call to find out what's going on, there should be appropriate training provided prior to that, so as they're aware of what to do and under what circumstances to do it. And to support that, we're holding a virtual engagement event on the 20th of February 2023, and that runs from 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock, I believe, and that will provide further information to all duty holders, and then they can join it. The details for that's on our website, and there's also a short survey there to help us identify what else we can do to support people. So I'll now move into the main report. So firstly, I'd like to just give a quick overview on our engagement activity over Q3 and some of the equipment we've supplied, because I think it's important to highlight the good work that's going on, and also the equipment that we supply to our communities to make it safer, and that reflects in hopefully a reduction in activity as we move on. So community activities carried out by our community action team, we carried out 25 in this period, and community activities carried out by our operational crews, we carried out 65. Home fire safety visits carried out were a total of 278, with 116 of them being high risk. So again, we're still identifying the people that's most at risk within our communities, and that's where our area of business lies. That's most important to us. Post-domestic incident responses, so when we're at an incident, we'll engage with the individual involved in the incident, and we'll also go to the premises next door, up above, or within that locality to identify whether they've got smoke alarms, any other systems that's required, and also to signpost people to our partners. And detectors fitted, we fitted 121 during this period, so again another significant amount. So moving on to the first indicator, so accidental dwelling fires, you'll note there's an increase in the year-on-year indicator of 45%. However, this is against an extremely low figure of 11 incidents in the same reporting period last year. So there was an increase of 5 over the 13-week period, but it's pleasing to note an overall reduction of 8% against the 3-year indicator, with again cooking being the main contributor and accounting for 70% of the activity. But it is positive to note that detection was present in 100% of the premises, and the detection actuated in 91% of them, so that's a real positive note for us, and this gives us early warning. So once again, it confirms public awareness in relation to the importance of the installation and the maintenance of fire detection within our homes. To support the reduction of accidental dwelling fires, our community action team are continuing to work with our partners to prioritise home fire safety visits and identify the most vulnerable. And we do this through our website and also through the reciprocal referral pathways that set up with partners. Our operational crews are also continuing to carry out targeted local initiatives in areas where there's been more than one accidental dwelling fire, and we also continue to deliver our fire safety experiential training to home carers and care home staff within East Renfrewshire, and this assists them in identifying people who may be vulnerable, and again through that referral pathway sending them back to us, and we can go out and carry out the safety visits. And through our research and statistics, we know that early identification and intervention is key to reducing this type of incident. Moving on now to accidental dwelling fire casualties, it's very positive to report that there has been a significant reduction in both the year-on-year average and the 3-year indicators in regard to accidental dwelling fire casualties. And this reduction again confirms that early detection is crucial in reducing injuries sustained from this type of incident. It also confirms that we're continuing to gain access to the most vulnerable within our communities, and again that our post-domestic incident response continues to be an extremely effective process by which to gain access to premises and identify the most vulnerable. Our fire crews in East Renfrewshire also continue to have the highest attainment rate of this type of engagement in the whole of Scotland, and that's been continual now for over a year. So great piece of work getting carried out there. Next I will cover unintentional harm. So it's disappointing to note an increase in both the year-on-year and 3-year indicators. However, again, it's also important to note that 50% of this activity is assisting other agencies by gaining access to premises, for example, Scottish Ambulance Service. And during this reporting period, our crews attended 4 road traffic collisions, all involving cars. This included a total of 5 casualties, 2 of whom received medical treatment for minor injuries, with only 1 being taken to hospital when they were in a critical condition. We also attended 1 hand impalement, 1 person falling from scaffolding, and 2 attendances at the station for ring removals from their hands, which is a regular one that we get, believe it or not. The rest of the incidents in this indicator involved supporting other agencies, as I've mentioned, predominantly Scottish Ambulance Service, with one of these incidents where we supported the ambulance service resulting in a fatality. Our community action team and operational crews continue to focus on road safety campaigns, including promoting Road Safety Scotland, as well as engaging with local schools through youth engagement to deliver the Young Driver initiative. Moving on now to deliberate fire setting. It's disappointing to report an increase of 42% in deliberate fire setting within the year-on-year indicator. However, to provide some context, this is against historical low figures in the previous year, and it's positive to note an 18% reduction across the 3-year average. The vast majority of these incidents were secondary fires involving refuse containers and grassland, and the 6 primary fires involved 1 lorry and 4 private vehicles, as well as a small fire in the bin shed of a local health centre. Our community action team and operational crews continue to deliver our youth engagement programmes to our schools, and our prevention team also continue to carry out post-fire audits where there has been a fire, to provide advice and support that's relevant to the individual premises and local businesses to reduce the deliberate fire setting. We also continue to work closely with our internal and external stakeholders, including Police Scotland and East Renfrewshire Council, to reduce the potential for this type of activity. And during this period, I'm pleased to highlight that through collaborative work with our colleagues in Police Scotland and East Renfrewshire Council, with an extremely successful bonfire strategy, which resulted in no attacks on our crews, which is really important, and also no significant events across East Renfrewshire, which again, and I'd like to thank Police Scotland for the support they provided us directly within our stations, so thanks very much for that. Non-domestic fire safety. There has been an increase in non-domestic fires in the year-on-year indicator. However, once again, it's important to note that this is against historical low numbers. It is encouraging to note a reduction in the 3-year average, and it is also pleasing to report that the majority of these were accidental, and firefighting action was only required at one instance, with damage limited to the refuge store and the canopy at the rear of the premises, which is the incident I spoke about earlier. Of the 7 incidents that we had during this period, 6 were accidental, with 3 caused by electrical faults, 1 with candles in a church, and 2 with burnt food within a shop and a school. And during this period, we also had 1 deliberate incident, which was a small fire in the bin shed at the rear of the health centre. And finally, moving on to unwanted fire alarm signals. Really encouraging to note a decrease in unwanted fire alarm signals across both indicators. The majority are again in educational facilities, with the main cause being accidental, system faults and cooking. But it once again highlights that the majority of UFAS incidents are avoidable. So given the intervention, the engagement with the people when we go to these incidents, the duty holders, then we should be able to drive these down. Human behaviour continues to be the main factor in this type of incident, and whilst we continue with our direct engagement through crews attending incidents and providing on-scene information and guidance, the main contributor continues to be humans failing to follow procedure when testing alarms, deliberate activation of alarms, and poor maintenance causing detector heads to become contaminated and activating. The reduction of UFAS continues to be a key priority within East Renfrewshire, and I spoke about that previously and the additional measures that we've put in place. And our UFAS champions placed within each of our stations engage with the duty holder at every instant to advise and support them. And our prevention team also identify key areas of activity and engage with the duty holder to instigate the most appropriate solution. So whether that be a mechanical solution, whether it be staff training or replacement of equipment, or in the event it's a deliberate incident, identify the cause and pursue through the appropriate channels. And also our prevention officers are currently engaged in a series of audits within identified premises within East Renfrewshire to review the practices and carry out audits where appropriate. Chair, this concludes my report. Thank you very much again for the opportunity to provide you with the information and go through the report, and more than happy to take any questions in regard to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alan, and for again a very comprehensive report. And I forgot to welcome you to the first in-person meeting for 3 years or
Thank
so.
you very much.
So it's great to have you here. I think it makes a huge difference. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll open it up to colleagues. Councillor Bamford.
I promise I won't ask so many questions because I already had a chat with you. First, I like with the police, a lot of these statistics and you've mentioned it are, they look bad, but we, like the police, we've got a very, very low incidence, and I think we have to remind people of that because, how safe our area is, but obviously you're not sitting in your laurels and ensuring that continues, and particularly collaborative work with HSCP. I think that's fantastic. I know you do so much work that's hidden that people don't associate with the fire service around your slips, trips and falls and all the stuff around are more vulnerable. I'm really glad about the UFAS because I know that's something that comes up all the time, because that £1,900 figure you mentioned is just a ridiculous not a ridiculous amount of money, but it's a huge strain in your budgets, and I'm hoping that number will go down even further, because I'm assuming that these key holders, when they realise that you're not going to come out to all incidents, that they will have to get out of their beds and check things, that maybe they're more diligent as they go along, and there should be less of them, which, as you mentioned, it means that you can help more with the community involvement. I just wondered, you talked about schools and our young people. I know you had cut back I don't know if any of the others have been in the past to the safety in the park and things like that, which is fantastic. And I know that's our primary school children, but the particular fire brigade, I would say demonstration, but that's perhaps not the right word, the one with the fire and the chip pan and all of that, I think that had been cut back a bit, so I'm just wondering if you're going to increase some of your community involvement with our schools. I know you have the Take 5 initiative in the high schools, so if you could just confirm, what, if your community involvement will be including more work in the schools. And a comment about the ring removal, I just cannot believe that. As someone who had to have it done but went down to a local jeweller's and paid for it, I can't believe people, it's a bit like the folk that phone 999 for whatever, to get an ambulance or the police out. Is there nobody, having visited the Control Command Centre for both the police and the fire brigade, the fire service out in Johnston, which I know I spoke to Graham about getting councillors back, because it's so interesting, because I don't think you appreciate how much goes on behind the scenes, and I understand some of the calls they deal with. Is there not a way of directing people when they phone for, in the way that the health service will perhaps direct people to, buy their own paracetamol, or more appropriate places like, go to your dentist, go to your optician? Do we not redirect people if they phone up for a ring removal? Because I cannot believe that we are spending money. I'm not saying that can't be a danger and people have their circulation cut off, but come on, to phone the fire service seems a bit, we need some more education out there. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Some really good points in there, just to give Cabinet members some reassurance around unwanted fire alarm signals. It's important to note, because I'd mentioned this at another committee, and people thought I was switching fire alarm systems off, and that is not the case. All this is putting the responsibility back to business, because whether you see a school as a business or whatever the particular duty holder of Fire Scotland Act premises are, it's important that we keep children in the class, young people in the class, children in the class. It's important that businesses keep flourishing, so those unwanted fire alarm signals aren't just a risk in terms of the blue light journeys of those fire appliances making their way to that instant. It's reducing demand for us, and it's an additional aid to the business for them to manage that. So we're not asking anyone to run into burning buildings. If there's any sign of a fire, the predetermined attendance, so the amount of appliances that are allocated to a particular premises, remains unchanged. Right, so if we are told that there is a fire, because in the vast majority of cases what actually happens is that the investigation piece has already been done, our operational crews attend, and they will be told, oh, we know what it is, it's through here, and they'll walk through the building, they'll show them an alarm, and then they'll go back and reset it. So all we're asking them at that point to do is to phone the control room and say, look, we don't need you. And that then stops that blue light journey, and that frees up capacity at our end, and then Alan can utilise that time in conjunction with the crews to do more of that preventative work. But just to reassure members, we're not coming, if that makes sense. I think sometimes people, when they hear that, because we've done this for so long, that they think it will be a measured approach, and the predetermined attendance will stay the same. In terms of events, we had a road safety event fairly recently at Eastwood House, supported by colleagues in Police Scotland, which was a real success. It was good to see them with their mascot out. His name escapes me. I think, is it Jackton? Jackton. It is, there you go, I remembered. So in terms of any safety events, and as I touched on as part of the industrial action update, we are absolutely 100% committed to events that will improve safety, that will improve education with young people. So we have a finite resource in our community action team, but we also have operational personnel that can support these events. So you can have an absolute commitment from myself that we will, if we can, we will attend any events that improve safety. In terms of the ring removal, you'll know, I don't know whether it's 29 years in this job, I don't wear any jewellery, but it's, as Alan said, it's a fairly regular occurrence, and to be honest, we have quite specific tools that deal with this, and if it stops somebody attending A&E and reduces the burden there, then it's something that we can do on station in relatively quick time. But it amazes me the point at which people get to before they present at the station, because sometimes when they're turning up at the station, you thought, if I was you, I'd have been here long before you've actually arrived. And just to finish off, and I'll speak to Alan once we leave Cabinet today, I think it would be important to extend an invite to Cabinet members to come and visit Operations Control at Johnston. It's a very worthwhile visit, and it will give you all some comfort about the amount of work and planning that goes on, not just in terms of steady state and normal business, but when we have significant events, spate conditions, there's an instant support room and they can talk you through how that works. I think that would be hopefully a worthwhile visit for you all to come and see how the planning happens behind the scenes when somebody phones 999. So I'll get that organised. Thanks, Chair.
Any other questions? Councillor Wallace, are you okay? Not on screen, so I'm assuming you're fine. Councillor Anderson, did you? No. Gordon, you do want to speak?
No, just say all okay.
Oh, right. Okay. Thank you, Gordon.
Yeah, thank you.
A few points, if I may. Also, you did have a question, Councillor Anderson. Make your mind up. Come on.
Well, I just wanted Councillor Wallace, possibly I saw him put his hand up, to have a chance. No, just a couple of comments really, and to ask questions with regards to the accidental fires and cooking being a common theme, but also I noticed in terms of the area. You've got the pie chart there. I mean, it's fantastic to see there's, in terms of no casualties is a great statistic. Very welcome to see that. But I noticed that in the Barhead area in Giffnock accounted for well over 60% of these. And is there a demographic involved, or more in terms of age at all? Because you wonder, and the obviously two factors are distraction and alcohol. Are pretty significant in relation to these, but and obviously it's great, it's so reassuring that you guys are there to respond and deal with these and have no casualties. But to help possibly reduce those, I'd imagine you have a strategy to hopefully to help do that. Another thing is to do with the deliberate fire setting, which is another one that's to do. UFAS is one thing, but and to see that increase is worrying because we don't want to get back to where we were before, where there was over 40. But again, I noticed that obviously particular cars and refuse, and is the refuse is it abandoned cars one thing, and also the refuse, is it actually like fly tipping that people then decide to deal with in some manner by actually setting it on fire? Just some feedback on that would be great, thanks.
So firstly, looking at the accidental dwelling fires and where they happen, when every accidental dwelling fire that we attend, we report against that, and we take the details of the age of the individual involved, any impairment, any distraction involved, so whether that be alcohol or drugs that's involved. So we very much focus upon that. We also look at clusters within the area, so within the localities, if there's a cluster within one certain area, we'll investigate that further, and our community action teams will tie into that area and carry out what we call an enhanced initiative, or an enhanced post-domestic instant response. So as opposed to just when the appliances are there, we'll then go and carry out a leaflet drop, we'll tie in with local groups to find out what's causing that within that area, and that's how we deal with that. But every morning our community action team review the figures and then they'll feed back to myself and David and the other cluster leads within the area and let us know, and then we identify areas that we want to target and we'll carry that out. But that comes automatically now. Our community action teams are looking at that when they come in. Every morning I get a brief for East Renfrewshire for every accidental dwelling fire, where it happened, what happened, the casualties involved, and I get that fed through to me every morning. And specific ones that we need to follow up on in terms of if there's been an AP1, so somebody in need of support or somebody at risk immediately, and we'll tie in with police colleagues at instance for that as well. We've had quite a few kind of higher profile ones recently there, and we've tied in with police colleagues at the instant and we deal with that there and then. But no, there's a monitoring process in there, and we monitor that every morning and we'll look at that. You sometimes get clusters where there's no identified key themes in there, if you like. You know, you'll just get a cluster within an area, but normally when it's cooking that's involved, it's distraction, or there's some kind of form of alcohol or drugs involved, and it takes people's mind away from it, and that's what it is. Time of day is important as well. So from us as an organisation, we would love it if everybody came in at night when there'd been a night out, particularly at weekends, and they bought something at the local shop in the way past, as opposed to coming in and putting the chip pan on or putting something in the grill, because we all know what happens. You know, you go away, you sit down, you fall asleep, and that's exactly what happens. But no, so that's what we do with that. In terms of the refuse cars, with a high increase in cars this quarter, it's something that's quite unusual. As you know, we never report against that, or very rarely with the report against that. However, on this occasion, these cars, they weren't abandoned cars, they were like stolen cars, and we've already tied in with police colleagues in regard to this. I can, as a positive, on the following quarter, as you'll see, that's been removed. So there'll be ongoing investigation into that with police colleagues, and we get what we call a code red vehicle. So these may be vehicles which are highlighted as being used in maybe a criminal activity or whatever, and police colleagues will feed this through to us, and we have that in our fire cats within every station. So we're aware of that, and we'll deal with it in a slightly different way to protect the scene, protect the evidence, and then pass that on to police colleagues. So quite unusual for it to have a rise there, but in the next quarter you'll see it's went back down again. So that's just a spike that's been there. The other deliberate fire setting, secondary fires as we call them, we tend to get more of a burst round about, the likes of maybe coming up to bonfire night in the summer when we get grass fires, and that tends to spike our figures up. So as we come towards bonfire season, you'll get the likes of the rubbish bins setting fire, or you'll get road furniture bins or whatever setting fire, and we go through spells of that. That's predominantly what's caused the spike in this year. But again, our community action teams are out engaging. This is the delivery at schools is not just about, you know, road traffic collisions, because bearing in mind that up to, you know, 4th year, 5th year at schools, that's when it becomes more prevalent for them to be getting information about, you know, safety and driving and different things like that. But some of the kids, you know, early years at school are the ones that's going out and setting rubbish fires. So that's part of our youth engagement programme. We're currently just now, I think the boss had spoke about that earlier on today. We had a meeting yesterday with East Renfrewshire Council up at Clarston Fire Station in regard to delivering the fire skills course. I was heavily involved in that probably 15 years ago up at Clarston, and we've got a facility there at the back of the station which where fire skills was introduced, with two of the previous watch commanders in there, and we're looking to reinstigate that. So hopefully we'll get a course. We're doing mini courses just now. My feeling is that the 1 week course where we'll bring in people that's been involved in the likes of fire related criminality, and we bring police colleagues in, social work, all the partners, and we come in and we deliver the key messages that we want to deliver, but we give them something at the end of the week as well, where everybody comes up and we do a presentation, and everybody gets to see what they can achieve. So normally we'll come in the Monday morning, they really struggle with stuff, and by the end of that week they're going out with a more positive outlook, but they're very much aware of the key messages that we need to be sending out and that our partners need to deliver.
Okay, thanks very much for that, and also very encouraging to hear. I did wonder, whilst you were going through it, you answered a follow-up question about the way you work together, and that makes absolute sense to me. It sounded very good to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Just to wrap up, just a couple of questions, a couple of comments. First of all, we very much welcome the offer of a visit to Johnstone Control Centre. I'm not sure if that will be organised through Eamon or not, but we'll work that out one way or another. That's very helpful. Very helpful to hear about if I got it right, the dedicated officer for UFAS. Yeah. So that's encouraging to see that. I think the change that you're announcing from the 1st of July on how you deal with UFAS, obviously that's something we need to keep a close eye on, and we'll follow that up presumably back end of this year, in terms of making sure that that's working effective for you guys. So that's all good stuff. Two very specific questions. We talked about the accidental fires in the home. 100% detectors in place, which is amazing, frankly. That was really, really good. But 9% didn't activate. Is any sort of story there in terms of why that's not the case?
There can be certain things which cause that. That can be the system within the premises isn't working properly. It can be the fact that where it's happened within the premises, that it hasn't actually. We get a lot of times that the detectors are wrongly sighted, and that's part again of our post-domestic incident response. So when we go in there, it's not just we don't every time go into a premises and find out that they don't have smoke detectors. For example, in sheltered housing, a lot of times what you find is the kitchen doesn't have a door on it. So what will happen is, for a simple repair, they'll take the detector away from outside there and they'll move it to another section of the house. The living room door then gets shut and somebody goes in to cook their rolling sausage within the kitchen, and what happens is, as opposed to the smoke going out, it deflects, comes back in, it's not picked up with the detector. So if we identify that when we go in, then we highlight the importance of where it needs to be. The likes of telecare alarm systems as well, really important where they're located. So we give advice on that as well. But sometimes it's just the fact that the detector, if it's an older style detector and it needs to be replaced, and we'll do that as part of our duties in the way around. If we feel that the detector needs to be replaced and we put a new one in, we'll do that. Sometimes if it can be a council premises as well, so local authority own the housing stock and they haven't been out for a visit for a wee while, the person has continually had the detector going off or it's chirping, and it's not unusual for somebody to take a walking stick to it and knock it down. So what we need to do is, again, it's our job to identify that when they're in there. That's how it's so important for us to be able to get into the premises, and whether it be through us or whether it be through the education that we give to partners, when they get to identify that, and then we can make that referral, we can pass it on, and that gets repaired and it gets put back up, and we can have the discussion and advise them how it's so important. So again, the key thing is getting into these premises, and that's how, and I thank everybody for it, but that's how the assistance of the partners, there's no way that we can do all this ourselves. So we need to be able to set up the referral pathways. Our job is to make sure that when a partner sends that through to us, it's dealt with, and we've been working on this over the past few weeks, and we've made great inroads to it. And it's that 360 feedback. So when it happens, we feed back to partners. When partners get involved, they're feeding back to us, and then we can take that back to the operational crews, and it's a finished product then. So that's where we're with that.
Very helpful, thank you. And just finally, it's not in the main report, but in terms of IFAS and schools, Mearns Castle's had quite a cluster of them. Is there anything that we're doing about that, or do we understand why Mearns Castle in particular is higher than other schools?
In regard to
IFAS.
with the UFAS?
Yeah.
No, that's the.
That was perfect. Thank you very much. Great response. Councillor Wallace, you'd like to come in?
Don't sound so surprised, leader. No,
just so you're aware, Councillor Wallace. Just so you're aware, you're on full screen, so we've got the joy of a full size larger than full-size version of yourself right now.
Oh goodness. Too much all at once. Okay. No, I was just to say there that the officer responded there. I won't ask him to repeat. He just didn't have his microphone on, that's all. But I'm sure I'll pick up on it later on. Okay, thanks.
I'm sure it'll be in the actions of the minutes, but it was a very full response. Basically, if it was regarding my last question on Mearns Castle, basically with the appointment of this new dedicated UFAS officer, they'll be addressing these issues where there are more incidents. So there's an action plan in place for that. But if the minutes will probably. Okay, so unless there's any other questions, I would like to thank our colleagues from Fire and Police for joining us today and draw this meeting to a close. Thank you very much.